In the heart of San Diego's Gaslamp Quarter lies the Horton Grand, a boutique hotel that recaptures the grandeur and opulence of the Victorian era. But behind its historic facade lies a story of a once grand hotel that became a forgotten relic poised for demolition before being saved and moved across town for a new life. Hi everyone, I'm Steve, and join me as we explore the rich history of one of San Diego's most fascinating hotels and some details that you can see for yourself on a new series geared towards architecture travelers. Welcome to Site Visits. If you visited what is now downtown San Diego in 1867, you would find mostly barren land. 20 years later, that barren land would have been transformed into a small, bustling community. This growth was fueled by developer Alonzo Horton's vision to transform that barren land into a new community that could rival San Francisco. Before Horton's land deal, San Diego was a small settlement a few miles north. Others had tried to bring the city to the bay, but failed. Locals warned Horton against purchasing 960 acres of land and creating a new town, but he persisted. He laid out a grid and began selling off corner lots. At first, lots in the middle of the block were given away to anyone willing to build on them. Progress was slow at first, but following the arrival of the railroad around 1885, travelers and new residents by the thousands arrived to Horton's new town, making Horton's vision a success and turning him into a local legend. To accommodate the influx of travelers, developers began building hotels. In 1887, a new hotel was built near the intersection of F Street and 4th Avenue, aiming to be the most luxurious in the city. It was called the Grand Hotel. The building was designed by the city's prominent architects Comstock and Trotsky. They designed the hotel in an Italianate style, a form of Victorian architecture that takes its cues from classic Italian architecture. This is seen in the building's flat roof with ornate cornices that help support the eaves, and arched windows and doorways. The opulence was not just on the outside. Inside, hotel guests were treated to a large, light-filled lobby with a handcrafted oak staircase going up to the rooms. The light was provided by a large skylight, and each room opened onto this central gathering space. That same year, also along F Street, another hotel was built, the less opulent Brooklyn Hotel. It was designed in an understated Victorian style that was common in the American West. Over the years, the two hotels played host to an interesting collection of guests. Wyatt Earp and his wife spent 7 years living in the Grand Hotel. President Benjamin Harrison and the King of Hawaii also stayed at the Grand Hotel. Over at the Brooklyn, Roy Rogers was known to stay there when he was in San Diego. In the early 1900s, the two hotels saw name changes. The first was in 1907, when the Grand Hotel changed its name to the Horton Hotel in honor of Alonzo Horton. In the early 1910s, the Brooklyn became the Brooklyn Kale Saddlery Hotel because of the saddlery that was found on its ground floor. As the hotels matured, so too did the neighborhood. The city saw a building boom in the years immediately before and after the Pan-Pacific Exposition in 1915, bringing with it newer, grander hotels. The two hotels continued to hold their own, though. However, in the years after World War II, the fortunes of the hotels began to wane. The Saddlery Hotel closed in 1960 and became a boarding house. By the 1970s, the Horton Hotel had also turned into a boarding house. Outside the hotels wasn't much better. The entire downtown area was in rough shape due to the rise of the suburbs. To combat this downturn, an ambitious revitalization effort that resulted in the John Jurdy-designed Horton Plaza Mall was announced. Such a development could certainly bring some life back to the two historic hotels. Except the mall was going to be placed right on top of them. Through eminent domain, the city slowly collected dilapidated buildings and began tearing them down. The few remaining buildings were the Horton, the Saddlery, and the Lyceum Theater. As demolition loomed in the late 1970s, a local developer named Dan Pearson stepped in. He met with architect and historical preservation expert Wayne Donaldson to see the viability of dismantling the Horton Hotel. When it came back that it was possible, Pearson persuaded the city to let him buy the Horton Hotel and dismantle it. They agreed, selling it to him for $1. In 1981, the process of dismantling the Horton Hotel began. Around the same time, the opportunity to purchase the Saddlery Hotel appeared. And again, Pearson purchased the aging hotel and began dismantling it, with the plan to combine them into one hotel. Dismantling the two hotels was less structured and organized than other projects of the similar nature. Bricks were not cataloged. They were simply thrown into a pile. Between the two hotels, 200,000 bricks were saved, as were 10,000 original fixtures, from railings to door trims to windows. A special item saved from the Horton Hotel was the hand-carved oak staircase. Once it was removed from the building, Italian craftsmen came to San Diego to painstakingly restore it. Pearson worked with the city to find a perfect site for the two buildings. A site was chosen 3 blocks from the Horton Hotel's original site on the corner of Island and 4th Avenue. It was once San Diego's small Chinatown neighborhood. Island Street had to be narrowed to accommodate the two buildings. As dismantling of the two buildings wrapped up, work began on fitting the two hotels into one cohesive property. From the beginning, challenges emerged. The biggest was striking a balance between preserving the architectural integrity of the original buildings while also making them modern, functional hotels. The issue was the original hotels had common walls on either side, with small or no windows. Such a setup would not be ideal for a new hotel, so the decision was made to rebuild the historic front facades as is, but the remaining 3 walls would be rebuilt to create better interior spaces, including seismic upgrades and the addition of elevators. The 2 historic facades would serve as a motif that would be applied to the rest of the hotel. Along the same lines, to increase revenues, another level of rooms would need to be added to the 3-story hotel. To achieve this, another floor was sandwiched in within the original double-high ground floor, which created a mezzanine level in the space that was once the Palace Bar. All these alterations meant that the building would not qualify as a historic landmark. A beautiful addition that Donaldson created was a lobby that linked the two hotels that resembled a glass Victorian conservatory. It sends natural light pouring into the lobby, and the new lobby brought symmetry to the property, with the 2 historic facades anchoring either end of the property. The lobby structure also created a beautiful courtyard with mature trees and a bubbling fountain. It provided an ideal urban oasis that allowed guests to immerse themselves in this quasi-Victorian setting. Scattered throughout the lobby and rooms are antiques and archival photos collected by interior designer Billy Riley. She was tasked with purchasing period-accurate furniture and fixtures that could fit within the hotel. She also had to reapply the fixtures that were saved from the original hotels, like different moldings. The result was a space that, while not entirely from the Victorian era, still managed to immerse visitors in the past. The hotel was finally completed and ready to open on June 1st, 1986, 99 years from the opening of the original Grand Hotel. Today, nearly 40 years later, it feels as though the Horton Grand Hotel has always been there. And while it's not the same as it was back in 1887, nothing is. It's good, though, to know that part of San Diego's past remains in some form. Buildings change and evolve, and they sometimes even move. But at the end of the day, those changes are good, because they let you know that the building has remained a valued part of the city.